WWE legends who hated Hulk Hogan in real life, even though he was once the biggest hero wrestling had ever seen. For millions of fans, Hogan was the man in red and yellow. He was the giant who told kids to train hard and eat their vitamins. He filled arenas. He made wrestling huge. To the crowd, he was a hero, but to many of the wrestlers who shared a locker room with him, he was someone else. They saw a man who used his power to guard himself. They saw politics, broken trust, and deals that always seemed to help Hogan first. And if you want more stories like this, give this video some hype now, because the deeper this story goes, the more it shows why so many legends never trusted Hogan again. To understand why, you have to start with the moment that brought all of that old anger roaring back. For years, Hogan was the face of wrestling. He was the safe hero. He was the man companies put on posters. He was the name they trusted to lead the show. Children looked up to him. Parents felt safe letting their kids cheer for him. He looked like the perfect role model. But that picture was about to crack. Then something happened that made the whole business look at him in a new way. A private recording of Hogan came out. On that recording, Hogan used vile, racist words. The tape became public, and it shocked a lot of people. It made headlines around the world. The company that made him famous cut ties with him for a time. His name was pulled from their history. For many fans, it was a sad surprise. But for many wrestlers, it was not just a bad headline. It confirmed a feeling they had carried for a long time. Some of them had seen the real man for years. Now the rest of the world could see a piece of it too. One of the loudest voices was MVP. His full name is Montel Vontavious Porter. MVP had spoken often about how black wrestlers were treated in the business. He was careful and fair in how he talked. He did not lash out without thought. When he spoke about other people in power, he made a point of being clear. He did not throw the word racist around. He knew it was a heavy word. He once spoke about how black male wrestlers were booked, but he made it clear he did not think the man in charge of that was a racist. He kept that line clean. He chose his words with care. But when it came to Hogan, MVP did not hold back. He named Hogan directly. He said he would call Hogan a racist. He held no warm feelings for the man at all. That mattered, because MVP was known for being measured. He was not a man who threw bombs for no reason. So when a measured man names you like that, it carries real weight. People listened. Then came Mark Henry. Henry is one of the most respected names in the locker room. He is huge, he is strong, and he is known as a kind and honest man. Henry did not just want to attack Hogan. He wanted to help him fix things. That made his offer stand out even more. Henry had no need to step in. He could have stayed silent. Instead, he put his own name on the line to give a fallen man a door back to the very people he had wronged. Henry offered to go with Hogan to schools with mostly black pupils. The idea was simple. Hogan would speak to those communities. He would face the people hurt by his words. He would say sorry in a real way, in person, where it counted. It was a path back. It was a chance to show true regret. Hogan said no. He refused to take part. He turned the offer down. Henry was deeply unhappy about that. To Henry, the refusal said a lot. It told him Hogan did not feel real shame. It told him Hogan did not truly want to repair the damage. A sorry on paper is easy. Anyone can read a statement. But standing in front of the people you hurt is hard. It takes real courage and real regret. Hogan would not do the hard part. He would not face those communities. For Henry, that was the answer he needed. The man would not walk the walk. He talked about being sorry, but he would not act on it when it mattered. The same anger lived in CM Punk. Punk had never liked Hogan, and not because of one tape. Punk had spent years watching Hogan use power. He hated how Hogan abused that power. He hated how Hogan faked injuries to protect himself. To Punk, Hogan was the worst kind of politician. He was everything Punk spoke out against. But the racist recording changed his dislike into real hatred. It pushed a mild grudge into something deeper and harder. Punk had already made his feelings known long before. In 2011, he gave a famous live promo on Monday Night Raw. People still call it the pipe bomb. It is one of the most talked about speeches in wrestling history. In it, Punk took aim at the top of the business. He compared a top hero of his own day to Hogan. He said that hero held his spot the same way Hogan once did, by staying close to the man in charge and keeping him happy. It was a sharp jab, and it landed. Years later, in a 2019 interview, Punk was even blunter. When asked about how he saw Hogan as a child, Punk used a short, harsh phrase to dismiss him. He had no kind words at all. He chose to praise a different legend instead, a man he felt protected the business with honesty and heart. Punk made his side clear. To him, Hogan was not the hero. He was the problem the business had to deal with. But here is the key truth. This was not the start of the hatred. It was not the moment the anger began. It was the moment a lot of old anger started to look even worse. Long before that tape, many legends already had deep problems with Hogan. Their grudges went back years and years. Some went back to the very start of his rise. To see why, you have to go back many years, to a fight that was not about race or fame. It was about money, safety, and standing together together as one. It was the first time the locker room saw what Hogan would really do when the pressure was on. That fight belonged to Jesse Ventura. People knew him as Jesse the Body. He was loud, smart, and not afraid to speak. He thought about more than just the next match. He thought about the wrestlers as workers. In 1986, just before WrestleMania 2, Ventura tried to do something brave. He tried to bring the locker room together as a union. The idea was simple and fair. Wrestlers worked hard and got hurt. They gave their bodies to the show, night after night, but they had little safety net. They were treated as independent workers, not staff, even though they worked only for the one company. That meant no real health cover. If they got hurt, the bills were their own. That meant no pension for later life. When their bodies gave out, there was nothing waiting for them. That meant no fair share of the money the company made off their names. Their faces sold tickets and toys, but the rewards went elsewhere. Ventura wanted to change all of that. He wanted the wrestlers to stand as one and ask for better. He wanted them to have power as a group. To do it, he needed the biggest star. He needed the man at the very top. He needed Hogan. A union with the top draw behind it had real power. Without him, it was weak. Ventura understood this, so he went to Hogan, hoping the biggest name would help the whole locker room. Hogan did not help. Instead, he went the other way. He quietly went past his fellow wrestlers. He told Vince McMahon, the man who ran the company, about Ventura's plan. He handed the whole thing over. With that warning, McMahon acted fast. He went to the wrestlers one by one. He told them that anyone who went to Ventura's meeting could be fired on the spot. Fear spread through the locker room. The bond between the wrestlers cracked. The meeting fell apart. The union died before it could even start. Here is the worst part for Ventura. He did not know who told. For years, he had no idea who the informant was. He only learned the truth much later. It came out during a legal case, a deposition tied to a money lawsuit against the company. That was when Ventura found out the name. It was Hogan. The man he had asked for help was the man who killed the plan. That broke their bond for good. Think about what it meant. While the rest of the roster had no safety net for life after wrestling, Hogan was doing fine. At big shows like WrestleMania 3, Hogan was paid more than the entire rest of the roster put together. He had his own deals. He had his own protection. But the men around him had nothing for when their bodies gave out. Ventura had tried to fix that for everyone. Hogan had shut it down. In the end, Ventura found his own way out. He went into acting. He took a role in the 1987 film Predator. Through that work, he joined a proper actors union. That gave him the health cover and pension that wrestling never did. He got the safety net on his own. But the men he tried to help did not. They had no such escape. They kept wrestling, kept getting hurt, and kept ending their careers with little to fall back on. And Ventura never forgot who stood in the way. He never spoke to Hogan again. The bond was gone for good. For Ventura, this was the first big proof. It showed that Hogan would protect his own place before he would ever stand with the locker room. This set a pattern that would repeat for years. Again and again, the same shape appears. There is a chance to help others. There is a cost to Hogan for doing it. And each time, Hogan picks himself. The Ventura story is the clearest early example, but it was far from the last. That was business. The next betrayal was personal. It came from a man Hogan once called a brother. His name was Randy Savage, the Macho Man. On screen, Hogan and Savage were a dream team. They were called the Mega Powers. Together, they drew huge crowds and huge money. They looked like the closest of friends. They looked like family. Fans loved watching them stand side by side. The two biggest stars of the day, together as a force. But behind the curtain, the trust was already thin. The friendship the fans saw was partly a show. Off camera, the cracks were there from early on. A lot of that came from Savage himself. He was fierce and protective about his wife. Her name was Elizabeth Hewlett, but fans knew her as Miss Elizabeth. She was his manager and his partner. Savage loved her deeply, but he was also very jealous. He watched over her closely. That was just who he was. By 1992, the marriage was falling apart. The hard travel and the long years wore them down. Savage's jealousy did not help. Into this painful time stepped the Hogans. Hogan and his wife at the time, Linda, got involved in a way Savage saw as crossing a line. While Hogan was in Miami filming a movie, Linda and Elizabeth grew close. The two women became friends. Then it went further. Elizabeth left her home. She went to stay at the Hogan house. And she did this without telling Savage where she was. Savage was frantic. He did not know where his wife had gone. So he picked up the phone and rang Hogan again and again. He was searching for her, and Hogan was the man who knew. But Hogan did not tell him. Hogan did not say where Elizabeth was. He did not help the two of them talk. Instead, Hogan gave him vague answers and steered him away, all while Elizabeth stayed under his roof. That shattered Savage's trust. trust. To Savage, this was not a kindness. It felt like a plot against him. He believed the Hogans had helped break his marriage apart for their own ends. He felt they had used a private, painful moment against him. The wound was so deep that the two men did not speak for about 10 years. 10 years of silence between two men who had once stood as the megapowers. A friendship that once sold out arenas turned to cold, hard silence. Savage did not stay quiet about it forever. He used the chances he got to hit back. In interviews and shoot promos, he took shots at Hogan's character. He let the world know he had a problem with the man. He even put his anger into music. On his 2003 rap album, called Be a Man, he recorded a track aimed straight at Hogan. He poured his bad blood into a song. The feud became public, set to a beat. There is also a darker story from this time. Backstage rumors, backed by some who were there, like Matt Bourne, say that Savage confronted Hogan in a hotel room before WrestleMania 9. The story goes that the two came to blows in private. People point to the black eye Hogan wore on the broadcast around then as proof. Hogan said in public that the eye came from a jet ski accident, but the backstage talk said something else. It said the real cause was Savage's fist. It is important to be fair here. This part is a rumor, not proven fact. The accounts say it happened, but it was never confirmed, so we should treat it as backstage talk, not as truth set in stone. We can share the story, but we cannot call it certain. The story does have a softer end. The two men finally crossed paths by chance at a medical center in Tampa. This was shortly before Savage died in 2011. There, the reports say, they made their peace at last. After years of silence, they let it go. But the years of anger were real, and they were long. The next story is about trust, of a different kind. It is about the trust between two men in the ring. In wrestling, every move depends on it. You put your body in another man's hands. If he is careless, you can be hurt for life. Nobody understood this better than The Undertaker. His real name is Mark Calloway, and his trust in Hogan was broken early. It happened at Survivor Series in November 1991. The plan was for The Undertaker to beat Hogan and take the WWF title. This was a big deal. It was meant to launch The Undertaker as a top name. The finish used a steel chair. Ric Flair would slide the chair into the ring. The Undertaker would then drop Hogan with his famous move, the tombstone, near that chair. It looked scary to the crowd. It looked like Hogan's head was in real danger. But The Undertaker knew Hogan was the biggest star in the business, so he took great care. He made sure Hogan's head stayed several inches above the metal. He protected his neck the whole way down. He did his job the right way, the safe way. Then came the trick. After the move, Hogan acted as if his neck was badly hurt. He groaned in pain on the floor of the locker room. He said he needed to go to hospital, and he started to talk. He spread word backstage that the young champion had been reckless. He made it sound like The Undertaker had been unsafe and had hurt him. For The Undertaker, this was a nightmare. He was new. He feared he had just hurt the company's biggest name. He thought he had ruined his own career. He was devastated. But the truth came out fast. The locker room gathered to watch the match back on the screen, and the tape showed everything. Hogan's head never touched the chair. It never touched the mat either. There was no way the move had hurt him the way he claimed. The Undertaker had done his job perfectly. So The Undertaker went to Hogan with the footage. He showed him the proof, and Hogan changed his story. Now Hogan said The Undertaker had squeezed his legs too tight around his head. He said that pressure had hurt his neck and back. To The Undertaker, this made no sense. It was not how the body works. It felt like a man making up reasons on the spot. The Undertaker saw what had really happened. Hogan had faked the injury. He did it to soften the blow of losing the title. He did it to get sympathy backstage, and it gave a clean excuse for him to grab the title right back just 6 days later at the next big show. From that day on, The Undertaker kept Hogan at arm's length. He did not trust him in the ring. He did not trust him outside it either. He had learned a hard lesson early in his career. He had put real care into protecting Hogan. He had done everything right, and in return, Hogan had tried to make him look like a danger. That stays with a person. The Undertaker would go on to become one of the most respected men in the business. He was known for his honor and his word, but he never forgot what Hogan had done, and it shows the deeper theme. Hogan would not just guard his own character. He would make another wrestler look dangerous to save his own face. He would risk a young man's whole future to soften one loss. This was Hogan's gift and his curse. He could protect his spot at the very top. He always found a way to stay there, but to do it, he often blocked others from rising. The next man in line would reach the door, and Hogan would close it. By 1993, the company wanted a new era. They wanted to move past the big, cartoon style of the 1980s. They wanted a sharper, more athletic show with better matches, and they had picked the new face to lead it. That man was Bret Hart, the Hitman. He was one of the best pure wrestlers alive. The plan was for him to take the company forward, but the change was stopped cold. At WrestleMania 9, in 1993, the plan went off the rails. Bret Hart lost the title that night to Yokozuna, after outside help in the match. Then, out of nowhere, Hogan came out. He challenged Yokozuna right there, on the spot, and in a flash, a match of just 20 22 seconds, Hogan won the title. It was over before it began. Bret was left looking small and weak. The new face of the company looked like an afterthought, and Hogan stood tall as champion once again, in the spotlight, holding the gold. This hurt more because of a promise. In his own book, Bret says Hogan had agreed to a long plan. The idea was that Hogan would later drop the title to Bret at SummerSlam 1993. That win would crown Bret as the true leader of the new generation. It would pass the torch. The company even backed this up. They held a photo shoot in Halifax in May 1993. In it, Hogan and Bret pulled at the title belt in a tug of war, building toward their big match. Then Hogan said no. He used his power to cancel the SummerSlam plan. He told McMahon that Bret was not on his level. He said Bret did not draw enough money to deserve such a big win. So instead of lifting Bret up, Hogan dropped the title back to Yokozuna at the King of the Ring show through more outside help. Then Hogan left the company soon after. Bret got nothing. The torch was never passed. The big moment that would have made Bret the clear leader simply vanished. Bret confronted Hogan backstage and gave him a sharp telling off. He let Hogan know exactly how he felt. And the bad blood did not end there. Later, both men ended up in WCW. There, Bret watched Hogan use his power again, holding down younger talent, while Bret himself was handed weak and damaging stories. He saw the same machine at work, the same man, protecting the same spot, at the cost of everyone around him. The point stands. Hogan could have helped crown the next leader. He had even agreed to do it once. But when the time came, he chose himself instead. Years later, fans dreamed of another huge match. They wanted Hogan against Stone Cold Steve Austin. By 2002, the war between the two big companies was over. WCW had been bought up. Now both icons were under one roof. The 1980s hero and the Attitude Era hero could finally clash at WrestleMania 18. The money potential was massive, but it never happened. And the reason was simple. Austin flat out refused to work with Hogan. His reasons ran deep. Back in the mid-1990s, Austin had been in WCW. He was a rising star, but stuck in the middle of the card. He was talented. He worked hard. He should have been climbing. Then Hogan arrived in 1994. With him came a group of older friends. They got the top spots. The best roles went to Hogan's circle. Younger, harder-working stars like Austin got pushed down. It got worse for Austin. He was hurt at the time, and he was fired by the company. The news came to him by post, by FedEx, while he was injured. There was no kind word, no face-to-face talk, just a letter while he was hurt. Austin blamed the political world that Hogan and his friends had built. He felt he had been cast aside by a system that put Hogan first. He never forgot it. In a strange way, that firing pushed him to become the biggest star of his era. But the anger from those days never faded. There was more than old pain. Austin did not trust Hogan to do business the right way. In wrestling, to do business means to lose cleanly when the story calls for it. Austin had watched Hogan in WCW. He had seen Hogan use his power to change match endings at the last second. Austin feared Hogan would do the same to him. He feared Hogan would twist the match to protect his own image, even if it hurt Austin. There was also the matter of style. Austin was a careful ring general. He liked hard, real, gritty matches that told a story. He took pride in his work. He felt his style and Hogan's style did not fit. One was raw and tough. The other was big poses and slow drama. He once said they were like oil and water. They would not mix. He worried the match would be poor and would let the fans down. The dream match that fans wanted so badly could turn into a letdown. He did not want his name on a flop. So Austin walked away from the dream match. He turned down a huge payday and a huge moment because he did not trust the man across the ring. The company gave the Hogan match to The Rock instead. In a clash they billed as icon against icon. The cold feeling between Austin and Hogan stayed for years. There is a sharp little moment from the 2006 Hall of Fame ceremony. Hogan went over to Bret Hart to offer a handshake. It looked like a friendly gesture, but Austin stepped in. He grabbed Bret by the shoulders and walked him away, so the two would not shake hands. He would not let it happen. Later that same night on stage during Bret's speech, Austin took a verbal swing too. He said he had found a can of whoop-ass with Hulk Hogan's name on it. The crowd laughed, but the message under the joke was real. The friction had not gone away. Even years later, Austin still wanted nothing to do with the man. If those stories show Hogan blocking matches quietly, the next one shows his backstage power blowing up in public. It happened in WCW, a company that was falling apart. The year was 2000, at a show called Bash at the Beach. And even then, deep in trouble, Hogan still held huge creative control. The head writer at the time was Vince Russo. Russo liked a certain kind of story. He liked to blur the line between what was scripted and what was real. He wanted the show to feel raw and shocking. The plan he wanted was this. The champion, Jeff Jarrett, would keep his title against Hogan. Then later, Jarrett would lose it to Booker T, making Booker the new top hero. It was a plan to build a fresh star for the future, but Hogan used the control in his contract. He flatly refused to lose to Jarrett. He said Jarrett was not a big enough draw to beat him. Once again, Hogan put his own spot first. What happened next was a mess. Hogan seemed to believe a deal had been struck. In that version, Jarrett would simply lie down. Hogan would pin him, win the belt, and walk out. He would come back months later for a big unification match against Booker T. So in the ring, Jarrett lay down. Hogan pinned him. Hogan took the belt and left the building. Sure, the plan had worked. But once Hogan was gone, Russo came out to the ring, and he let loose. It was not scripted at all. It was a real, angry rant, straight from the heart. Russo blasted Hogan in front of the whole crowd. He said Hogan controlled the company's stories for his own money. He said Hogan used his power to bury younger talent. He said Hogan held the entire company hostage with his deals. It was every backstage complaint, said out loud, on live television. Then Russo went further. He said the title Hogan had just won meant nothing. He fired Hogan, live on air, for all to see, and he set up a new title match between Jarrett and Booker T. Hogan now saw the truth. He had been double-crossed for real. The story Russo told had been a trap. Hogan thought he was following a plan. Instead, he had walked into a public takedown. He never appeared in WCW again, and he did not let it go. He filed a big lawsuit against Russo and the company's parent owners. He claimed Russo's rant had hurt his name and broken the terms of his deal. The case dragged on, but it was thrown out in 2002. Still, the hatred between Russo and Hogan never healed. Russo kept hitting Hogan's backstage politics for years, long after WCW was gone. He kept saying the same things Hogan's other rivals had said, that Hogan put himself first, that Hogan held companies back, that Hogan cared only about Hogan. It was the moment Hogan's hidden power spilled out for everyone to see. The politics that had stayed behind the curtain for so long burst right out into the open, live on air. Not every protest was loud. One of the most famous was quiet and clever. It came from Shawn Michaels. In 2005, the company set up a dream match. Shawn Michaels would face Hogan at SummerSlam. The first plan was for a two-match set. Hogan would win the first match. Then Michaels would win the rematch. It was a fair trade. Each man would get a win, but the rematch never got made. As the show drew near, Hogan used his power again. He told the bosses he could not do a second match. He said his body would not take it. That meant only one match would happen, and Hogan would win it. He would take the win and walk away. Michaels would get nothing back. Michaels was angry, but he did not refuse the match. He was a pro. He showed up and did the job. But he had a smarter idea. He chose to protest with his body, right there in the ring, in front of the whole world. During the match, Michaels began to oversell. That means he acted as if Hogan's moves were far more powerful than they were. When Hogan threw a simple punch, Michaels flew across the ring. When Hogan hit a basic move, Michaels flopped about wildly on the mat. He spun, he flailed, he made it look silly. He bounced around like a man hit by a truck, when really, it was just a light punch. He turned Hogan's offense into a joke, on purpose, in front of everyone. The fans who knew the business understood right away. This was not a normal match. This was a message. After the match, he kept it going. In his interviews, Michaels gave Hogan sarcastic praise. He said kind words that were not really kind at all. Everyone understood the message. It was a protest against Hogan's politics. To this day, it stands as one of the most famous quiet jabs in wrestling history. Some men hid their hatred. Scott Steiner did not. Big Papa Pump made no secret of how he felt. He hated Hogan, openly and loudly, for all to hear. He never softened it. His reasons were the ones we have seen before. He believed Hogan had played politics with the WCW locker room. He had watched it happen up close. And he believed Hogan had shown deep disrespect to Randy Savage, a man Steiner felt strongly about. That anger stayed hot for years. It did not fade with time. If anything, it grew. It boiled over in March 2015, around the weekend of WrestleMania 31. Hogan's wife, Jennifer, was at the San Jose airport. Steiner approached her there. What happened next is not fully agreed on. After that, the story splits into two sides, and it is fair to share both. By the police report that Hogan filed, Steiner grabbed her and threatened to kill Hogan the next time they met. That was Hogan's account of it, written down for the police. Steiner told it differently. He admitted he had walked up to her, but he denied making any death threat. He said his real point was about respect. That weekend, Hogan was helping put Randy Savage into the Hall of Fame. To Steiner, that was a sick joke. He thought it was deeply two-faced, given how much Hogan and Savage had truly hated each other for years. So Steiner said he went up to say that, not to make a threat. Whatever the truth, the company took it seriously. Security treated it as a real risk. They put up notices with Steiner's photo at the doors of the SAP Center. He was banned from the building. He could not attend the Hall of Fame ceremony at all. His face was posted like a warning. And Steiner did not back down one bit. He showed no regret. He called Hogan a coward in public. In later interviews, he said Hogan's whole image was built on lies and on using people backstage. He said the hero the fans loved was not real. The old grudge was still alive, decades on. Time had not cooled it at all. It shows how deep the anger around Hogan ran. Years after the matches were over, the hatred was still burning hot. Some men hated what Hogan did. Others hated what he stood for. A group of old-school wrestlers saw Hogan as a threat to the very idea of their sport. To them, wrestling was meant to look like a real fight, a real contest of skill. It was meant to feel serious, almost like a true battle. Hogan, with his big show and his cartoon style, felt like an insult to that. He was all flash and posing. He was about the crowd, not the craft. To these men, he made the whole thing look fake. 3 names stand out here. The first is Bob Backlund. Backlund held the WWF title for an amazing 2,135 days, the second longest reign ever. That is a huge run. He earned it. He was a serious, technical wrestler. He cared about real holds and real skill. He saw Hogan's character as cartoonish. He saw Hogan's ring skills as thin. He felt Hogan leaned on show and flash, not real ability. To Backlund, that was a stain on the sport he loved. The story goes that Backlund would not turn bad and hand the title straight to Hogan. He did not want to be the one to pass it over. So the company had to use the Iron Sheik as a go-between champion in late 1983. Backlund later said harsh things. He accused Hogan of cheating in life and using drugs to get ahead. He said Hogan did not walk the walk of a true champion. He felt Hogan took shortcuts that an honest wrestler never would. The second is Ric Flair. In time, Flair and Hogan drew big crowds together and even became friends. They shared the ring at the top of the business. But Flair's book tells of a bitter moment between them in WCW. In one on-screen scene, Hogan was set to hit Flair's son, David Flair, with a leather belt. It was meant to be part of the show, but Flair wrote that Hogan went far too hard. He said Hogan took full advantage and went completely overboard with the lashes. To Flair, this was not a worked moment anymore. This was his real son, being truly beaten. Flair called the beating sickening and unprofessional. As a father, he was furious. He said he would never forgive Hogan for what he did to his boy. Even a friendship could not heal that wound. The third is the Iron Sheik. His real name was Hossein Khosrow Ali Vaziri. In his later years, he built a huge following just by raging at Hogan in public. His anger became almost legendary on its own. The hatred went back to January 1984. That was when Sheik lost the WWF title to Hogan at Madison Square Garden. That match made Hogan a superstar. It launched everything. But by Sheik's own telling, there was a wild story behind it. He said a rival promoter named Vern Gagne had offered him a large payment to break Hogan's leg in that match and walk out with the belt. It was a chance to end Hogan before he ever rose, but Sheik refused to do it. He dropped the title cleanly and did the right thing. He protected the business and his opponent. Yet the anger never left him. For the rest of his life, on talk shows and on social media, he screamed about Hogan. He kept his words colorful but harsh. He called Hogan a selfish manipulator. He swore to lock him in his famous hold, break his back, and make him humble. He never let go of it, right to the end. The last great rivalry is also the one with the kindest end. It was Hogan against the Ultimate Warrior. His real name was Jim Hellwig. The two were both huge, both loud, both larger-than-life heroes. They had the same kind of energy and the same kind of fan base. They were on a collision course from the start. And at WrestleMania 6 in 1990, they met. It was a rare title-against-title match, hero against hero. The crowd was split right down the middle, and in a shock, the Warrior won. He beat Hogan clean, with no tricks, on the biggest stage there was. It was one of the few times anyone pinned Hogan fair on such a night. Hogan did not take it well, at least not deep down. He kept his cool in public, but in private he resented the loss. Later, he criticized the Warrior's work in the ring. In his book, Hogan said hard things. He said Hellwig had no game. He said the Warrior lacked basic ring sense. He called him a flash in the pan who ran out of steam minutes into his matches. It was a harsh judgment on a man who had beaten him fair. The trouble grew when the Warrior asked for equal treatment. He wrote a letter to McMahon. He asked to be paid and respected the same as the company's biggest draw. He wanted to stand level with Hogan. McMahon agreed for a short time, but then suspended the Warrior soon after the match. The Warrior felt pushed aside. Then came the worst blow. In 2005, the company put out a documentary called The self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. It was harsh and one-sided. It tore the Warrior down. It painted him as a failure, and Hogan took part in it. He spoke against the Warrior on camera. He suggested the Warrior never deserved the title. He even said the fans cared more about Hogan leaving the building than about the new champion in the ring. It was a public burial, captured on film for everyone to watch. For the Warrior, it was a deep cut. The man who had beaten him clean was now helping bury his name, and it left the Warrior bitter for many years. He felt the whole thing was a hit job, and that Hogan had a hand in it. But this story does not end in anger. It is the one feud on this list with a truly warm close. In April 2014, at WrestleMania 30, the Warrior was at last put into the Hall of Fame. It was a big honor, long overdue. Backstage, the two old rivals finally made peace. Hogan said he truly regretted taking part in that cruel documentary. He owned it. The two men hugged. They shook hands. They let the hatred go after all those years. And the timing makes it hit hard. Just days later, the Warrior died of a heart attack. It was sudden and shocking. He had found peace with Hogan, right at the very end of his life. If they had waited any longer, the chance would have been gone forever. That late peace helps soften the whole sad tale. It shows that even the deepest grudge can heal, if both men choose to let it. So what does it all add up to? It is fair to give Hogan his due. He helped make wrestling huge. He carried it from small regional shows to the top of the world. He filled stadiums. He sold millions of shirts. He made a whole generation of kids believe in a hero. He gave the business a face that the whole world could know. Many fans will always remember the man in red and yellow with a smile. They will remember the big boot, the leg drop, and the roar of the crowd. That part is real, and it should not be taken away. His place in history is huge, but there was another man behind the curtain. Many legends saw him, and they did not like what they saw. They saw a man who guarded his own spot above all else. They saw him stop a union that would have helped them all. They saw him block younger stars from rising. They saw him fake injuries and twist the truth. They saw him cross personal lines and break old friendships. They saw politics, betrayal, and broken trust. From the labor fight with Jesse Ventura, to the pain of Randy Savage, to the broken trust of The Undertaker, to the blocked dreams of Bret Hart and Steve Austin, the same shape keeps showing up. One man, protecting his place, at a cost to everyone around him. To them, the story was never just about Hulkamania. It was about how much harm one man could do while staying at the very top. That is the hard truth at the center of it all. The same power that made Hogan famous also made him feared. The same control that kept him on top also left a trail of anger behind him. He was a hero to the crowd and a problem to the locker room, all at once. Both things were true. Hulk Hogan may always be remembered as one of wrestling's biggest icons, but to the legends who felt betrayed by him, the real story was never just about the cheers and the gold. It was about the cost of power and the trail of broken trust he left behind on his way to the top.